from 6 to 10, for example. That works, but in my opinion, it leads to more of a...
What's up? 筋肉翻訳です。さあ今日は減量を促進させる1日の中で断食を行う断続的断食のおすすめ時間設定見ていきましょう。1日の中で食べない時間を設けるインターミッテントファスティング、聞いたことはありますか？このチャンネルでも何度か紹介をしています。今回はクリスチャンさんがどんな注意点があるのか、どんな時間配分がおすすめかについて話をしてくれています。後半では分かりやすくまとめているので最後まで見ていってください。どうぞ。
Now that you've considered all the pros and cons and limitations of intermittent fasting, you might have decided to go for it, right? And really, I'm not the kind of guy who tell you don't do it, right? Try it. The worst thing can happen is that it might make you burn in hell. No. Right? There's nothing wrong in trying it, and many of my clients ask me, can I try intermittent fasting? Deep down inside, I know they're asking because they want a license to eat some crap once in a while. And after a week or two, they always comment, well, I went really overboard, I gained some fat, it's not for me. But I want them to experience it for themselves. That having been said, as I mentioned, for some people, it's actually a decent pattern of eating. People who are naturally extroverted, competitive, were always fidgeting, always doing something. These people naturally gravitate toward that kind of eating anyway. I mean, I'm going to give you an example of an athlete I've worked with that was actually before intermittent fasting was a thing, because that was like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. He was a sprinter, and I would actually have to remind him to eat. Otherwise, he would only have like one meal a day and a Mars bar during the day, for example. So these people are naturally always moving. They are always in sympathetic mode. If they have an overactive nervous system, it puts them in sympathetic mode most of the time, and they don't think about eating. So these people can actually do pretty well on it. Mixed martial artists, for example, fall in that category. Sprinters fall in that category. I'm not saying they should do it, but if there's some people who can do it, it's them. Now, the applications, I mentioned my figure athlete that I used with in the past, where we had 1 or 2 days of fasting during some phases of training, not all the time. Just to kickstart the diet the first month or so, we would have 1 or 2 days of fasting in a day and 5 days of regular eating, just to upregulate the enzymes responsible for mobilizing and utilizing fat for fuel. So that's an approach that can be used. So they would basically eat at maintenance or slightly below for the 5 normal eating days, and they would have the 2 fasting days during the week. So added up over a 7 days period, it will lead to about let's say a 4,000 calories deficit, good for a pound or 2 of fat loss in a week. But more importantly, it would be the upregulation of those enzymes. So that's one approach. The other approach is the more typical intermittent fasting, which would be to have a 12 to 16 hours of not eating and then eating. Now, the traditional people were often like, I'm not eating from the morning to 6 p.m., then I have 2 meals from 6 to 10, for example. That works, but in my opinion, it leads to more of a starvation response. So it's much harder to stay focused during the day, much harder to stay disciplined when it comes to the eating period. A better approach is to actually use the sleeping time as part of your fasting period. So you would basically have your first meal at 12 or like noon or 1 p.m., then a second meal at 6 p.m. and not eat for the rest of the day. So that would be more practical from being functional during the day standpoint, but you still would have that pretty long fasting period. So that's a practical way of using intermittent fasting. But remember, it's not a license to eat crap. You eat the same foods you would eat over a regular day of eating, but compressed in 2 meals instead of 4 or 6. That is very important. It's not a license to eat crap. So these two applications can be effective if it fits your neurological and physical profile.
さあ、いかがでしたでしょうか。日中の食べない時間が長いと飢餓状態となり制御が難しくなる。睡眠時間をうまく使う。食べるものは通常通り計算されたものを食べる。とのことでした。確かに断続的断食を行っている人の話で空腹がきついという話を聞いたことがあります。体が飢餓状態になると体は余分にカロリーを吸収しようと働いてしまうので、僕はあまりメリットを感じていませんでした。日常的な食事との使い分けが大事ですね。最後まで見ていただいてありがとうございます。セカンドチャンネルのオカザーマンチャンネルでは世界の情報をお届けしています。概要欄のリンクから見てみてください。ではまた。
I won't look back when you're around. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back. 'Cause I won't